U.S. Senator Mark Kelly has had an extraordinary and very unique career. Listen to this. He was a Navy captain and NASA astronaut before Arizona voters elected him to the Senate. That was in 2020. He also, by the way, is a children's book author. Kelly's latest book is the third in his picture book series. Mousetronaut Saves the World is based on his space experience. He knows something about that. We'll talk about it in a moment. He was here really to talk about the book, and then, as you know, life has happened. Recently, the senator spoke at the Democratic National Convention, backing Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. He's also a strong supporter of tougher gun laws. His wife, as you know, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, was shot and seriously wounded by an attacker. That was back in 2011. We're very happy to say that Senator Kelly joins us in the studio. Good to see you, Senator.
Good to see you, Gayle.
It's hard to believe, 2011, here we are, 2024. I promise we're going to talk about the book, but because of the news of the day, we want to get your thoughts about the shooting. When something like this happens, how do you process it? What goes through your mind as someone who knows this experience firsthand?
Well, yeah, this issue's very personal to me, and it's very tragic, and it happens way too often in our country. Parents and children have the right to feel safe in a school.
Yeah.
Kids shouldn't have to worry about sending their kids off and somebody showing up with a gun. I mean, this issue makes our country stand out in the worst of ways. I mean, it's really a horrible situation. Recently, though, we passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which is going to expand background checks and do a number of other things on this issue. But we have to do more.
But we all say this. We hear people say we got to do more. We all say we're strong. We all say love overrules, hate doesn't win.
And then it happens again.
And then it happens again and again and again.
By the way, mass shootings, hundreds of times just this year in our country.
Yes. So we're in this vicious mourn, pray, repeat cycle. And it's so frustrating to me because we all keep hearing the same thing and nothing changes.
Well, here's what folks can do.
Today, yes.
Here's what they could do.
Yes.
They could, before they vote for somebody, they could look and find out where do they stand on this issue. Are they in favor of more background checks? Do they want safer communities? It's what most Americans want. I mean, this issue polls at, very high numbers. Background checks, poll up there with ice cream and free money.
Yeah.
Above 90%. So you gotta hold your elected leaders accountable.
You think it's as simple as that? It's just voting. You think it's that? Because we say this is what we want, but we also seem to think it's okay to kill kids at school.
It's myself and my colleagues that make the laws.
Yeah.
There are folks that are in favor of stronger laws to keep people safer, and there are folks that just want guns everywhere and no restrictions on firearms. That's not the country we should have to live in.
All right, well, we're not going to solve it today, so I'll make the difficult turn to a children's book. I guess apropos, right? Because my kids will be reading it. My kids are going to school today. We're thinking about the worst that can happen, but let's focus on what is great about childhood, which is books like this, to be honest with you. It's very funny. You're right about that. Very cute.
Yeah.
Drawings are great.
And kids get excited about space.
And the hero is small, just like kids. You know, just like
adults too, by the way.
And I'm particularly interested in this, based partially on a true story. Now, in Model Rocket Club, when I was a kid, we put some lizards in the model rockets.
You did. How'd they do?
Are you here to disclose that we've been putting mice into space?
My first space flight, we took 18 mice for an experiment. It's a pharmaceutical experiment, but I think the important point was like 17 of these mice were kind of freaked out by the experience.
Yeah.
But one of them seemed to get it and would float over to get his food and float back and get his water.
Okay.
Like in zero gravity.
Okay.
It was rather entertaining.
So what's the partially true story?
Well,
that's the idea. Okay, all right.
That's it right there.
Yeah, they didn't help us repair anything or fix anything.
Not yet, but they'll get trained up. So what are you hoping kids take away from this?
Well, interest in science and math, but more importantly, interest in reading. Now, I had 2 daughters, and now I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, and kids get excited about space.
But also in this book, the president is a Madam President. Now, you certainly wrote this book before Kamala Harris was even in the race. I love that you did that. Why did you do that? Madam President.
You know, having 2 daughters and a granddaughter now, I think it's important for young women, girls, to see women in leadership roles. Critically important, because then they can see themselves in that role someday.
You said your granddaughter found out you were an astronaut. You were an astronaut in a funny way.
Yeah, this is pretty funny. We had these astronaut salt and pepper shakers.
Yeah.
And they were on the counter. This is 3 months ago. And she points at it and says, "What's that?" And I said, "Sage." Her name's Sage. I said, "Sage, that's an astronaut." And she looks me straight in the eyes and she says, my grandfather's an astronaut.
He's talking about you. That's hilarious.
Not realizing that was
That's
me.
hilarious.
And I-
Just repeating the lines you heard.
yeah, and I said, I've heard that.
Yeah, I've heard of that guy. We saw both you and Gabby speaking at the convention. She was knockout mark, by the way. I remember the
good.
first time she spoke publicly after the shooting to where she was on the stage. You were both there.
She's so much better at that stuff than I am.
No, you
Really,
did
really
pretty
good.
good.
You're good.
But we got less than 60 days. 60 days, I think.
61, I think.
61 days. What does Kamala Harris and the Democrat Party need to do to wrap this up?
30 seconds there.
Work harder than the other side. Knock on more doors, make more phone calls, have a better message, which she does. I mean, the contrast between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump could not be more clear to the American people about what these two candidates stand for. Kamala Harris wants to help Americans bring down costs, child care, education, pharmaceutical prices, healthcare costs. You know, what does Donald Trump stand for? You know, he wants to, his last administration, big tax cut to billionaires, weakening our alliances,
Senator Kelly.
Like you
taking
said,
away,
voters have to decide.
We got to go.
taking away rights, reproductive rights from women.
Appreciate you. We'll be right back.